Hey there, I'm Jeff Cordes, and welcome to the C.R.A.P Leadership Podcast. My philosophy is about C.R.A.P, caring, respect, appreciation, and praise. C.R.A.P is the linchpin that will reduce your turnover by up to 80% and help you build a high-performance culture.
And this is Randy Walensky. Been a speaker, trainer, sales professional, and coach for over 10 years, using all of Jeff's C.R.A.P. I started using these principles early in my career as a leader, and I've been continuing to apply them in all my other business interactions. And we want to bring these principles to you in your organization. Let's jump in.
Only about 10% of the people that are put on P.I.Ps actually survive and become successful.
It means you're one step from being fired.
If you really care about your people, you want to see them succeed.
Why would I want to be somewhere where they don't want me?
It's one thing to have that person have a sense of urgency. But if they're scared to death, they're not going to perform at their best.
P.I.Ps. You know what a P.I.P is? You ever been on one? You ever put somebody on one? Nobody likes them. Performance improvement plans. These are not a popular thing for anyone to be a part of. Nobody wants to get put on one of these because it essentially means they're about to exit you from the organization. It means you're one step from being fired. And we're going to talk about that today because there's a lot of misconceptions. And I think people are just in general using these incredibly wrong.
Well, they are. I think, I read a Wall Street Journal article recently, and they said that only about 10% of the people that are put on P.I.Ps actually survive and become successful. Well, that tells me that people are, and organizations are using these in the wrong way. You should never get to that point. In performance improvement plan, you work on the performance, you shepherd people along, and you help them get better so that they become a productive member of your team. But yeah, when you're talking about only 10% survival rate, that tells me we're not using performance improvement plans correctly.
Oh my goodness. You're 100% correct. They're very demoralizing. They put people into a box and people kind of use them as that last step before they exit them. So maybe that's also part of it. Maybe it's the psychology that people know, or maybe they feel like this is just a tool to get rid of them. And they go, well, if that's the case, I might as well just start looking somewhere else, because why would I want to be somewhere where they don't want me? Or, just however they're positioned, they're not positioned correctly to be effective for what they're originally were intended for, right? The intention is, hey, you're having some problems with X, Y, and Z performance. Let's say it's sales. Let's say you're not hitting your numbers, or you're not putting in the metrics that they're looking for. Eventually these P.I.Ps come. But with a 90% failure rate, we should be looking at this and say, there's got to be something inherently wrong with the way we're doing this. Why are we continuing to do this? Why do we have this tool? And what is the purpose of it?
Well, I think what's happened is again, I was an HR leader for years. And when performance improvement plans first come out, they were designed to improve performance. But I think what's happened is they've been degraded to the point where all they are is a C.Y.A. for an organization. We've become a much more, I hate to say it, we've become a much more litigious society. And as a result, performance improvement plans are there. Organizations can say, oh, we gave this person a chance. They didn't step up. Don't blame us, or don't sue us. How's that? Yeah, it's probably a better way to say it.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. They have just become a paper trail to prove that you did your due diligence, but they either haven't been structured, they haven't been implemented, or they've no longer become useful, which is a weird thing that we keep using them as a gold standard, even though we know they're not useful. I think it has to be 100% the reason is this makes sure we don't get sued and say we discriminated. And even more, maybe they're used to push people out. They're like, hey, we don't really like this person. Let's find a way to put them on a P.I.P.
Right.
This will be their 90% chance that they'll just leave on their own. And when they leave on their own, we don't have to pay unemployment. We don't have to get sued.
Right.
I think that there's a lot to the P.I.P. that people are missing out on, because if somebody is truly failing, but they're sticking with the company, they probably would like to be succeeding.
Right.
And if we could get a training or a process that genuinely was looking at that and saying, okay, if we do X, Y, and Z and we measure this, we're going to turn this around. So let's do that. Or the position. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that the people are not positioning these correctly to people? What do you think is causing this 90% failure?
I just think people now more and more organizations use them to do C.Y.A. Because if you're doing it the way you should be doing performance management. And we can talk a little bit more on this when we get into the podcast. But performance management, you should be talking to your people on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. If you're doing performance management properly, and you know what you're doing as a leader, and you got someone who even to some extent wants to work with you, you can turn people around much better than doing a performance improvement plan. I think we jump to performance improvement plans faster because, frankly, it's an easy way out. And that goes against my grain because, you know me, I'm the crap guy. I talk about caring, respect, appreciation, and praise. If you really care about your people, you want to see them succeed. That's part of being a caring leader. And again, I always tell people, if you don't care about your people and all you're looking to do is run somebody out of your organization, I question whether or not you should be in a leadership role.
100%.
I mean, right? Because you're not there, and you don't want to put in the work, and that's performance management. And versus waiting and then just throwing somebody in a pit.
Well, and it seems like the PIP is the last resort of potentially the lazy manager, because if you were doing the performance improvement regularly and you were working with people and you were gauging and you were monitoring them and you were coaching them, you'd either never get to the point where you'd need a PIP, or between the two of you, you would make it very clear that there's some clear things that need to improve. Otherwise, maybe this job isn't right for you. I'll give you an example. If it's a call metrics and you have to hit 50 calls a day for whatever the thing is, or you have to hit this certain level of customer service score and just they cannot get to it, and no matter what you're doing for training, they should know about that before the top down forces the PIPs. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. You have your front level managers that are maybe doing whatever, maybe they're always distracted, maybe they've got too many things going on, they're kind of neglecting their people. Someone comes along, looks at the arbitrary metrics and says, here's your 5 people that are below the grade. PIPs have to come out. Here you go hand it. And they go, yeah, I wish we didn't have to do this, And so it's maybe not always a sinister thing from the manager. It could be because of negligence. And then somebody just goes, these are your low performers. They're costing the company more money than they are bringing in. Yeah, get rid of them. Exactly what can happen. But if you were to front load the work, you wouldn't have to have that. And then once everybody's on it, if you're a manager, you don't want to put your people on PIPs. You don't want to be on one. And it's clearly not working. So I think that's the best point is how do you get ahead of ever needing to use this tool? And then I guess that's the other part we could talk about. How about that though, Jeff? If you do have to use a PIP, how do you have to structure this so it doesn't have this such as high failure rate that maybe, heck, I'd go for 50-50 right now. That'd be a pretty good improvement on this one. What do you have to do?
Structure them. I mean, you bring somebody in, and I'm assuming you've been talking to them all along, at least to some extent. Mm-hmm. And then you have to put them on the performance improvement plan. And, when you bring a person in, you start talking and say, look, I'm putting you on a performance improvement plan. You've got 90 days to improve your performance. And then say, well, let's talk about what we need to do in order to do that. And you problem solve with them. You don't just say, hey, you got 90 days to get your poop in a group, or you're gone. No, you sit down with them, you talk to them, you problem solve with them, and then you should be meeting. And this is what I always did. The leader should be meeting with that person at least every week, talking about what are you doing right, what do you need to continue to work on? Because if you start to see performance that you want to have the opportunity to reinforce that and say, this past week I noticed this, keep it up. We're making progress. Let's talk about what we're going to do in the following week. to keep you on the right track and to keep you growing and moving forward. And again, I come at things, if you care about your people, you want your people to succeed. And that should come out in a performance improvement plan.
That's such a good point. There's two things that I heard in there that you talked about is the timely feedback is so important that they're getting it when it's relevant to them. And then we're all basically like Pavlov's dog, right? We're all wanting to salivate for the treat. We're all wanting to be our best. You know, if you're a good person, they've got a good person working for them and they want this to succeed, then that positive reinforcement, which I'm sure we'll talk about, you know, praise and appreciation at another time, but those little pieces let somebody know, oh, they're paying attention. They notice what I'm doing. I want to do more of that because I want to get more praise. I want to excel. We're all kind of driven and built that way versus the old school way, right? Of just slap people when they're failing. Is not, they just have proven that is not the most effective, or don't talk to people at all. And then you only hear from your boss if it's something negative. No, we want to hear more often. And we talked about this in a different one. Want to hear all the little positive pieces because that helps balance out the times that there are going to be negative or constructive criticism or problems. But catching somebody on a weekly schedule when they're on a PIP is really good, that you can catch the positive things and correct those or not correct them, but embrace those and praise those and get more of that and let it build on each other. That's a really good point.
What I found is if a person is scared to death, they're not going to perform as well. They're looking over their shoulder constantly, and they're thinking, "I'm on my way out the door," and so as a result, they're uptight. They don't do the things that they might not as interact as confidently with a customer or whatever the case might be. But if they're scared to death, you know, it's one thing to have that person have a sense of urgency, but if they're scared to death, they're not going to perform at their best, even if they're trying. You know, so. The discussion has got to be constructive. It's got to be constructive discussion. I mean, it can't be, here's your 90 days, get it together or you're gone.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have a real problem with that.
Throwing them up against the wall. You know, what's interesting, I've seen people on the, you know, different areas of the spectrum, but when either, let's say like a salesperson, as an example, is just leading and succeeding and hitting quota and hitting the dollars that they need to and whatever they do, they have a much more relaxed, genuine, and they sell better. I've seen on the opposite side, when people are checked out and about to leave, sometimes they also do pretty good with sales because they don't care anymore. So they're just like, hey, yeah, you know, and they don't put any pressure or like nobody likes a pressure.
Then they're real. They're real, you know, or they're real.
But both times we've had the pressure removed. So that's the point there, is like that middle ground or that PIP area means every opportunity has got to be squeezed for its max. Whereas when they're already checked out, they have no pressure and things are easier. Or when they're winning, the pressure feels off and they can be more natural. They can let themselves come out more. So the pressure there is that's a big factor for how this could be and what might be causing. People maybe don't like the pressure. So it's easier to eject. It's easier to go somewhere else, get a clean slate, not try to dig out of a hole. That's probably another big part of it.
Yeah. And again, I talk about the fact that, you know, it really needs to be constructive. And the person needs to have a sense of urgency. Don't get me wrong. You know, I mean, you can't do this for them, but you can facilitate their improvement and progression.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is the main purpose, that if you're a leader of people, that you exist, is to help facilitate, remove barriers, and facilitate growth, change, and progress in your people. So again, this could be a tool in your tool belt, but you have to use it correctly. A hammer is a great tool, but it's not a great tool for removing a bunch of screws, right? A screwdriver doesn't hammer nails. So it's another tool, but you have to use it properly for it to work and to get your people to improve when you get on it. That would be an interesting thing to find out. We're going to have to do this. Well, if we can find the research, we'll bring it back. When are PIPs successful? What is the process that they do? And I think we've given people really great ideas on what to do with those, what we've seen be more successful for those. But I'm curious if there's any studies that have aggregated and tried to be this way with your, but it just is kind of intuitive, right? If I think you don't care about me and you're just trying to get me out and cover your butt, I'm probably just going to leave anyway. Makes sense. If I know
maybe
you care
that's
about
what some organizations want. That's not my philosophy. It never has been, and it won't. I mean, it's just, again, I come from the caring side. Caring does not mean that you're a wimp. Okay, don't get me wrong. I mean, I was never known as a warm and fuzzy HR guy. I wasn't, but I like to think that people respected me because I was a straight shooter, and people knew I cared. But again, you got to be talking honestly with people, because if you're talking honestly with people, I think they will generally respond. Audience, if you like what you're hearing, you can reach out to Jeff at jeffcordes.com or scan the barcode.
Can they get it? Think it's big enough?
I don't know. We'll see. If not, go to jeffcordes.com. Randy, yeah, okay. I gotta say. Anyway, 3 takeaways from today that I would emphasize for you is stop using PIPs as a substitute for performance management. Performance management should come first. And then PIPs have their place, but not until you're doing solid performance management. When something happens, you got to be timely in your feedback. If you're not timely, then frankly, as a leader, you're not doing your job. Got to give people feedback. It's got to be timely, because otherwise you wait a week, they're not going to even know what it was that they did wrong. The other thing is I think you have to have the mindset that you have to want the best for your people. You want your people to succeed. And if PIPs are truly done the way they should be done, when they're absolutely necessary, it's because you want your people to succeed and you want the best for them.
No, that's really good, Jeff. I like it. Yeah, and this is great. If anyone's got comments, questions, concerns, they go, I tried it and it didn't work. Put those comments to us. Send us that information. We can talk about it again. We can expand on it in another podcast and whatnot. So, yeah, we want to hear from you. Looking forward to our next time. And do we know what the next one is? What are we talking about next time, Jeff? Is it working remotely? What are we talking about?
Working remotely is going to be our topic. Hot topic. I mean, particularly what's going on in the government and everything at this point. But this has been a problem that people have faced for the last 2 years. I've seen it with my clients. But yeah, that'll be a fun one, because I mean, it's controversial to say the least, and
lots of opinions on it.
Lots of opinions, and I don't know that there's any right or wrong answers, but you got to do what works for your organization. So it'll be a fun one. The last thing I want to tell people is, remember, you got to give your employees crap. Why? Because crap works.
Oh, we almost had it there, Jeff.
Yeah,
all right.
We'll get it down eventually.
One of these times. We appreciate you. We'll see you later.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.